Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, in whatever time zone you are in, and a very warm welcome to you all. And thank you for joining us today for today's event, UN Peacekeeping in the time of COVID-19, a high-level dialogue on challenges, responses, and lessons. This discussion, which is our 8th ministerial and annual dialogue on peacekeeping, takes place in the context of the global COVID-19 pandemic. COVID poses profound public health and peace and security challenges for all of us across the globe. Our aim today is to take stock of the diverse ways in which UN peacekeeping and troop and police contributing countries have adapted in order to continue delivering essential functions, supporting peace processes, and protecting civilians. The discussion will highlight lessons that recent experience offer for other peacekeeping contributors. Where is additional support required to overcome challenges of the immediate public health risk, and how missions carry out their mandates in the field in the context of the pandemic. Our distinguished speakers will explore how the Secretary General's Action Plan for Peacekeeping, A4P initiative, and the 2021 upcoming UN Peacekeeping Ministerial Meeting can help address immediate operational needs and improve the effectiveness of UN missions related to the challenges of the pandemic. To steer us through the discussion, let me now give the floor to Namie Di Razza, IPI Senior Fellow and Head of our Protection of Civilian Projects. She will introduce our guests and moderate. Thank you. Namie, over to you.
Thank you, Terje. The UN currently operates 14 peacekeeping missions in conflict-affected environments around the world. So far, these countries have not been among the hardest hit by the pandemic, but they are among the least able to effectively respond in the event of a major outbreak. While no country is immune to the virus, conflict-affected countries are especially vulnerable. Even with the eventual development of a vaccine and therapeutics, COVID-19 can have lasting socioeconomic effects, fuel and exacerbate drivers of instability and violence, and slow down peace processes. In response to the significant public health and peace and security challenges posed by the coronavirus for host countries and their communities, the UN, with troop contributing countries and police contributing countries and other partners, had to adapt. Peacekeeping operations have adopted measures and developed innovative approaches to carry out priority tasks, to mitigate the risk of transmission among peacekeepers and to communities, and to support local preparedness, prevention, and response. Yet, a lot of challenges remain. As they strive to deliver on their mandate in a pandemic context, uniformed and civilian peacekeepers had to scale down their operations, limit the engagement with communities, and conduct many activities remotely. The pandemic also put an additional strain on resources dedicated to peace and security, both in countries hosting peacekeeping missions and in countries contributing to peacekeeping efforts. I would like to thank our co-hosts for the event today, the government of Finland, Rwanda, Uruguay, and Indonesia, and I am very pleased to introduce our distinguished panelists who will offer their perspectives on emerging lessons, continued challenges, and areas where additional attention is required to ensure the effectiveness of peacekeeping. Our first speaker is His Excellency Mr. Pekka Haavisto, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Finland. He will be followed by His Excellency Professor Nshuti Manase, Delegated Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Rwanda. Unfortunately, His Excellency Dr. Vincent Biruta was called away. And then we will have His Excellency Mr. Febrian Rudyard, the Deputy Foreign Minister for Multilateral Cooperation of Indonesia. And I will then invite Mr. Atul Khare, the Under-Secretary General for the UN Department of Operational Support, to offer his perspective. His Excellency Mr. Francisco Bustillo, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Uruguay, will not be able to join us today as he was called away at the last minute to address the Parliament. So let's start. Minister Haavisto, Finland has been a long-standing supporter of UN peacekeeping and is actively involved in peacemaking and mediation. We really look forward to your perspective. You have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Namie, and thank you for this opportunity. And distinguished ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. This is already the 8th time we are co-hosting this event with IPI, Indonesia, Rwanda, and Uruguay, and this time under very exceptional circumstances. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit us hard, affecting every corner of the globe. At the outset, I would like to commend the UN and its leadership for decisive action in this challenging situation. The UN operations have worked to prevent and contain the virus in the operations. The operations have also supported the efforts of national authorities to respond to the COVID crisis. I commend also Secretary General Guterres' call for a global ceasefire earlier this year. It is clear that the pandemic poses a significant threat to the international peace and security. The long-term implications are yet to be seen, but we can already see the pandemic is likely to intensify existing conflicts, increase social inequality and unrest, peace processes might be stalled, and dormant tensions can wake up. Ladies and gentlemen, crisis can also be an opportunity, and the pandemic offers a chance to rethink and develop the UN peacekeeping further. The Action for Peace initiative, aimed to make UN peacekeeping fit for purpose, remains in the midst of pandemic as timely as ever. Finland supports the Action for Peacekeeping initiative and is firmly committed to our shared commitments. I would like to share a few thoughts on our priorities regarding the development of UN peace operations. With the wide-ranging impact of pandemic on every sphere of life, I would like to underline the importance of comprehensive approach on peace operations. Peacekeeping has to be an integral part of an inclusive peace-building process that creates ground for reconciliation, social cohesion, as well as sustainable peace and development. This means that peacekeeping, political process, development cooperation, and humanitarian aid should be planned and implemented in tandem, requiring close cooperation between UN peacekeeping operation, country team, and other partners, including civil society and NGOs. We should not forget the role of the UN policing and other civilian experts, which are an integral element of peace operations and contribute to the full peace continuum. Performance and capabilities of troops are crucial in order to ensure the success of peacekeeping. The operations need adequate resources to implement the mandates, but also well-equipped and well-trained troops to carry out their tasks and adapt to new realities and tasks. Finland has been a long-term provider of capacity building and training of peacekeepers. Pre-deployment training, in-theater training, and strengthening cooperation between member states and the UN are crucial in this regard. Comprehensive peacekeeping demands comprehensive training teams, and for example, context-specific human rights training can provide the tools for peacekeeping missions to complete their duties in a more sensitive and effective manner. For peacekeeping to be effective, I would like to highlight the importance of participation of women. This year, we are marking the 20th anniversary of the Women, Peace and Security Resolution. In 20 years, we have made progress, but still a lot remains to be done. We should continue our efforts to increase number of women peacekeepers, as it's clear that more female peacekeepers means more successful operations. I recognize that this goal poses challenges also to Finland. In civilian crisis management, the proportion of women is already over 40%, but in military crisis management, much lower. Women's participation in peacekeeping, for example, widens the skills available for UN missions. It also widens the access to communities and the understanding of the needs of the local population. With COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen an increase in violence against women, as has been highlighted also by the Secretary General Guterres. We must redouble our efforts to address this negative trend. Peacekeeping women peacekeepers are often best placed to do this, as they have better access to the local population. This is one of the reasons why Finland supports training of female military officers through UN Women under the Global Facility for Women, Peace and Security, And we also contribute to the LC Initiative Fund, which aims to increase the number of uniformed women in UN peacekeeping. Finland also provides, together with Norway, a specialized police team specializing in countering sexual and gender-based violence to the UNMISS operation in South Sudan. To conclude, Madam Chair, we are living uncertain times as the long-term impact of COVID pandemic is still to be seen. Unfortunately, the need for UN peace operations may well increase. With conflicts and operational environment changing, the nature of operations may evolve towards smaller civilian operations. The economic impact may constrain the usual troop contributing countries' willingness to contribute to UN peacekeeping, and we should keep mindful of these changes. Whatever happens, strong long-term commitment by the troop and police contributing countries is needed more than ever. Let me reiterate Finland's firm commitment of participation in UN peacekeeping and to the Action for Peacekeeping initiative now and in the future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Minister, and thank you for raising all these very important points, the comprehensive approach to peacekeeping, the need for resources and capacities, the participation of women, especially in this context of heightened threats of violence against women. And I think all these needs are especially important now with the pandemic. So thank you for raising those. I will now give the floor to Minister Manasseh. It is worth noting that Rwanda is currently the third largest troop and police contributing country to UN peacekeeping, with over 6,000 uniformed personnel deployed in the field. So we really look forward to your views on these issues, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Terje Lassen, President of the International Institute, Peace Institute, Mr. Turkar, and the Secretary General for the Development Operational Support, distinguished participants. It's a great honor to take part in this 8th annual ministerial event on United Nations peace operations, hosted by the governments of Finland, Indonesia, Uruguay, and Rwanda in collaboration with the International Peace Institute. As we celebrate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations Charter, I would like to commend the role played by the United Nations peacekeeping operations, which have embodied the UN engagement to maintain international peace and security across the world. I further take this opportunity to pay tribute to the service, sacrifice, and selflessness of UN peacekeepers who have lost their lives due to COVID-19. Until today, peacekeeping operations represent for the international public opinion the last version of international peace. However, the current global socio-economic context arising from the COVID-19 pandemic has threatened progress in peace building. Indeed, COVID-19 has impacted on operational and resource efficiency of peacekeeping operations and exacerbated existing tensions across the world and provide a fertile ground for future conflicts. At the end, peacekeeping missions had to adopt their modus operandi to minimize the risk of COVID-19. Major troops and the police contributing countries have faced various logistic and financial constraints. By way of example, Rwanda has to test 5 times each individual before, during, and after deployment in peacekeeping missions. However, none of these tests are reimbursed by United Nations. To another extent, Rwanda is facing logistic challenges related to the contamination of all aircrafts during operations, as well as deployment of personal protective equipment, which were initially provided for medical staff and which are now required for the majority of our peacekeepers. It's important to recall that it's not the first time UN peacekeepers operate under pandemics. As such, the challenges of facing Ebola while protecting civilians in Eastern Congo has provided valuable lessons to prepare peacekeepers to continue to conduct operations safely and effectively. In this context, I would like to highlight the use by MONUSCO of communication tools and drones to monitor security developments remotely in Eastern DRC. Distinguished participants, Despite the call for the global ceasefire by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in March 2020, we witnessed an increase in tensions and conflicts across the world. The international community should remain vigilant that the reduced presence on the ground of national state authorities and peacekeeping troops caused by COVID-19 pandemic does not provide a leeway for armed groups to strengthen their stronghold. In this context, as significant resources are being diverted to respond to a health crisis, but we must continue to build strategic partnerships and alliances to ensure that UN peacekeeping operations are adequately funded and resourced to overcome global peace and security challenges, while contributing to create a conducive environment towards delivering to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. As such, the upcoming UN Peacekeeping Ministerial Conference in April 2021 is an opportunity for member states to not only affirm but expand their commitment to UN peacekeeping missions. Distinguished participants, I would like to conclude by thanking International Peace Institute, as well as the governments of Finland, Indonesia, and Uruguay, in ensuring that this important and timely event takes place despite the challenges caused by COVID-19. Finally, I look forward to interacting with all of you during the upcoming discussion session and hope to physically meet you next year for the 9th annual ministerial event on the United Nations peace operations. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Minister, for offering these very valuable and practical lessons from the direct experience of your personnel in the field, and for also raising all these efforts to provide the necessary equipment, the technologies, and for raising this point about the need for the right resources and the need to continuously fund and support peacekeeping. So with that, I will now turn to Deputy Minister Rudyard. Indonesia is a major troop and police contributor with over 2,000 personnel in the field and has been an elected member of the Security Council the past 2 years. So Minister, we welcome your perspective. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Namie Di Razza. Let me begin by thanking the International Peace Institute for organizing this virtual high-level dialogue on peace operation. And I also would like to thank for the maintaining the continuity of this dialogue. Indonesia is pleased to once again co-host this dialogue along with Finland, Rwanda, and Uruguay. And the event is both timely and relevant, particularly as we continue to face the challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic. As we are witnessing, the pandemic has affected the work of peacekeeping operation and implementing their mandates. It restricts the movement, delay troops rotation, and require quarantine measures. However, in this time of crisis, peacekeeping mission should continue to carry out their mandates while assisting host country to mitigate the impacts of the pandemic. Their tasks are not without risk. This pandemic will pose greater challenges for peace operation. And again, this backdrop, I would like to highlight 3 points. First, our collective commitment to support peacekeeping operation should be strengthened. The role and contribution of peacekeepers have become more important than ever. They bring hope for the people on the ground. Therefore, it is time for us to materialize our support for them through a strengthened partnership among all of us. For our part, Indonesia remains committed to contributing to peacekeeping operation. Currently, more than 2,800 Indonesian peacekeepers, including 126 female peacekeepers, serve in 8 peacekeeping missions around the world. Our support and contribution to peacekeeping shall not be vain. Second, improving peacekeeping performance and ensuring the safety and security of peacekeepers must go hand in hand. On one hand, a clear and realistic mandate combined with training and capacity building measures will surely improve peacekeeping performance. On the other hand, it should be balanced with necessary measures to ensure the safety, health, and security of a peacekeeper. Nowadays, peacekeepers are deployed in increasingly dangerous security environment. Adjustment and innovation are pertinent to keep up with the continuously rising challenges. Not only Indonesia has been updating its training materials periodically, it has also implemented strict observance to COVID-19 protocols, pre-deployment and post-deployment of our peacekeepers. Third, our effort to increase participation of women in peacekeeping operations should be redoubled. Indonesia affirms our position as a strong advocate of the role of women, including female peacekeepers, as the agents of peace. Throughout the time, female peacekeepers have played important roles to increasing the effectiveness and performance of peacekeeping mission. Their presence would bring more impact to local community, in particular to the protection of women and children. For this reason, as the President of the United Nations Security Council last August, Indonesia initiated Resolution 2538 that was adopted unanimously. Not only that, it is the first ever standalone resolution on women in peace operation, but most importantly, it is a clear evidence of our commitment to promote the full, equal, and meaningful participation of women in peacekeeping. To conclude, our peacekeepers on the ground are counting on our strong support and collective commitment. Today's meeting offers us the opportunity to renew our collective commitment to peacekeeping. Let this meeting today be part of a testament to our support. I thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I really think that indeed the collective commitment to peacekeeping is essential. And as you said, it's also a partnership. So improving the performance goes hand in hand with ensuring the safety and security of peacekeepers. And I think that's an important point that we can maybe further discuss later with the discussion section of our event. And thank you for reiterating the role of women. It's especially important now with the anniversary of Resolution 1325. And I'm sure we'll go back to this. So in the meantime, I would like now to turn to Undersecretary General Care. The Department of Operational Support has worked to ensure that missions are adequately supplied with personal protective gear, testing kits, respiratory ventilators, and other supplies to ensure that peacekeepers have access to care. And more broadly, your department is engaged in wide-ranging efforts to provide missions with improved support to handle diverse challenges. So could you maybe tell us more about these efforts and the ongoing challenges that personnel face in the field? Thank you, Mr. Kare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, Ministers, Excellencies, Ambassadors, President of the IPI, dear colleagues and friends. Let me begin by thanking the governments of Finland, Indonesia, Rwanda, and Uruguay, and of course the International Peace Institute for organizing this event. Your commitment and engagement to ongoing discourse and constant interest in peacekeeping is deeply appreciated, especially as we face unprecedented challenges of this global pandemic. However, thanks to the dedicated women and men in our peace operations and to the steadfast engagement of all the troop and police contributing countries, we have continued to deliver on our mandates in the field. I wish to pay a particular tribute to the personnel who have lost their lives due to COVID-19 while serving in the field. We currently have, as of today morning, a total of 1,450 cumulative cases recorded across all field missions. Of these, 1,173 cases, or some 80%, have occurred amongst the uniformed personnel, the police and the troops. The 11 deaths which occurred within these uniformed personnel represent a case fatality ratio of 0.9%, but nevertheless, of course, we feel for each and every sacrifice which a peacekeeper has made in the cause of duty. I want to assure you that we continue to work towards a further reduction of this proportion from 0.9% to even lower. My department, in cooperation with my sister department, the Department of Peace Operations, have put in place a range of measures that have contributed to containing the spread of COVID-19 among peacekeeping personnel. Early on, where we identified trends and patterns, we tried our best to adapt and foster new and innovative approaches. Let me give you a few examples. One example is our recent effort to ensure best practices in our medical facilities and to ensure that public health experts were able to provide timely advice to our missions. When travel restrictions arose, we established virtual walkthroughs in 21 field mission hospitals to ensure that they met the requirements laid out on hospital preparedness to respond to COVID-19. Comprehensive virtual walkthroughs of contingent level 1 clinics and camp settings by public health experts were also carried out to inspect implementation of COVID-19 outbreak preventive measures and were completed in 6 missions: MINUSMA, MINUSCA, MONUSCO, UNMIS, and UNAMA. Their lessons were then shared across all missions, and this model is now being adapted for use in other areas beyond medical inspections, such as the pre-deployment visits and other inspections. Early on in the outbreak, we also paused the rotations, as mentioned by the distinguished Deputy Minister of Indonesia, in order to ensure the safety of our personnel and the host countries where we serve. We have then, as rotations have resumed, put in place stringent conditions for the safety and security, including pre-deployment training on COVID-19, a 14-day quarantine period in the home country, adherence to the mission's quarantine regulations upon deployment in theater, physical distancing, and the use of personal protective equipment. We intend to carry out a midterm review of the partial resumption of these rotations with the aim to identify lessons learned and best practices. We will ensure that the review team engages with all troop and police contributing countries to ensure that their perspectives on what has worked well, what are the remaining challenges, and then to find ways to enhance our cooperation and coordination on rotations going forward. I want to touch very briefly on the ongoing and newly established Medivac mechanism. It has received 99 requests so far. It is a UN system-wide mechanism operated by my department. And this has given us the low figures, which you see that when there was a serious case amongst the peacekeepers, they could be evacuated out without any challenges. We have also tried to provide testing facilities within our missions. And I think this is a work in progress, but going on well. We are also enhancing ways to provide greater training, but training through use of electronic means. So we have shifted much more to electronic training, e-training, including inter alia in our triangular partnership program, which is managed by my department. I want to conclude by actually picking up, if you permit me, on what His Excellency Mr. Pekka Haavisto mentioned, that all crises are opportunities, and what was equally indicated by the distinguished deputy ministers of Rwanda and Indonesia, that we need to find innovative approaches for the peacekeeping of the future. And that is why I have been calling on all my colleagues to never speak about return back to normal. I think there will be a new normal, but there won't be a return back to the pre-COVID-19, and we will try and learn from this experience all the good measures. And in this regard, I want to compliment you for organizing this event, which will provide us with more ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kare, for presenting us these figures and also all these best practices. I think the department has been very busy over the last months, and there are so many new approaches, and indeed, I think there will be new modalities of work in the future that will persist. So I think all of our speakers have provided very valuable perspectives on the challenges faced in the field and the ways in which peacekeeping is adapting. Thanks also for highlighting all the additional efforts that are needed. And with this in mind, I would like to begin the discussion by asking each of you 2 questions. What efforts have the UN and troop and police contributing countries taken to better prepare peacekeepers to safely and effectively continue to conduct operations? Can you give us more examples on best practices, lessons that have been or should be shared with other troop and police contributing countries? And secondly, how can the Action for Peacekeeping initiative and the upcoming Peacekeeping Ministerial next year can best support missions' immediate operational requirements and prepare the UN and contributing countries for potential upcoming challenges. So maybe let me turn to you, Minister Haavisto, if you want to offer a few perspectives on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and let me first thank my colleagues from Rwanda and Indonesia for very interesting contributions and views on the future of the peacekeeping, and also Undersecretary General Mr. Kare on your good analysis and actually your conclusion, which you picked up from the discussion or in the discussion that we will not return maybe back to normal, and we have to think and rethink how the UN peacekeeping and also the civilian components could be maybe reformed in the future. And Madam Chair, to your two questions, let me first say that of course on the personal level, when the COVID-19 news have come out, of course many peacekeepers are very concerned, and they are asking, do they have the proper equipment? Are they trained properly? To what kind of tasks they are ordered in the time of the COVID? How big risk is there for them? And of course, their families at home are as concerned. And we politicians, we get the questions in Parliament, and how are we protecting our peacekeepers? And particularly when peacekeepers have to work also in the countries where the COVID-19 situation has been worsening and worsening. And I think this is very much about the training, of course, the pre-deployment training, which we have, of course, increased now the pandemia components and explaining how to protect yourself, and also training on the ground and in the theater. And also what has been our recommendation, of course, is to comply with the national health authorities and their requests and demands, but also cooperate as much as possible with the civil administration where peacekeepers are, and understanding also how the situation is developing and so forth. But of course, this pandemic has had an influence to the effectiveness of the peacekeeping, and if and when this pandemia time continues, we have to look how to handle this. Of course, another issue is what people are asking already, is the vaccination topic, that when the vaccine is available, will the peacekeepers be among the first ones to receive it? And I think there are very good grounds to think that particularly people who are in difficult circumstances would also be protected through the vaccination against the pandemic. And then on this first question, finally, I think the experience on handling the Ebola epidemic in DRC and Liberia gives us actually a lot of information how to handle and how to protect people in extremely difficult circumstances. And I think we should also use this Ebola experience and of course terrified situation, but we also learned quite a lot from there. And then to your second question, and also regarding the ministerial meeting, and I'm coming back actually to what Undersecretary Kare said about the rethinking and coming to the new normal. And I think this is now the opportunity both for the troop contributing countries and police contributing countries to look how the future of the peacekeeping looks like, and how we could maybe redefine our role there. And also we have people who are saying that we have come to the world of pandemics. It's not only maybe unfortunately the COVID-19, we might face also other health challenges. As I mentioned, we have all already seen the Ebola kind of diseases and others, and of course maybe even in the training include more this component of how the host countries which are hit by the pandemic, what kind of support they would need through the other UN agencies than the peacekeepers. So again, what I mentioned in my speech, that how do we combine peacekeeping with all other development efforts, humanitarian efforts, and so forth. I think this is coming more and more important. And then maybe to the countries which are contributing the troops, I think the message should be very loud and clear also then from the UN level, that this is not the time to give up. This is not the time to reduce your budget on these needs. And I know from the domestic debate that, when you see in the budget some money for some international purposes, very easily you try to cut first that, whether it's development aid or funding for the peacekeeping. And I think to clarify people that the only way to live in a safe world is to keep on this and continue this very important contribution that we have for the peace through the UN currently. Thank you. Thank you, Namie.
Thanks, Minister, and thanks for this call to remain committed to peacekeeping and peace and security in the international realm. I think it's indeed very important to make the case for the continuation and increase of resources for peacekeepers and really prioritizing our peacekeepers. I think it's an interesting point about how to prioritize vaccination and also offer more training as we can. So with that, I'll also ask His Excellency Professor Manasseh from Rwanda to maybe provide a few insights on these two questions.
Thank you, Namie Di Razza. Let me probably start by the second question on peacekeeping ministerial. First of all, a country should give the capacity to the peacekeeping operation. I mean, in material, and not only in material, also in money. We should also encourage member states, because we know mainly in a country like in Africa, we have lots of countries that are willing to provide peacekeeping people, but they lack equipment, but they have the people, but they lack the equipment and other materials. So the peacekeeping ministerial should also encourage the UN Secretariat in implementing the action for peacekeeping. And last but not least, we should also encourage the host country to be member of, to be integrated in what is doing, in what is taking place in the peacekeeping operation. Of course, returning to the first question, I would say that in order to do your job, you have to be safe yourselves. So we need to detect the people we are sending, to give them, it's more or less like the second one, to give them the necessary means, adequate protections, and adequate protection, and not only to avoid that, they have to be safe in order to save others. And that is mainly what I have to say on this. I have concluded also my remarks on the first question. I was saying that in order to do your job, a country has to detect the people that they are sending in peacekeeping operation. In Rwanda, we do it 5 times during the operation, before, during, and after, to protect not only the people they are going to work for, to save, and once they are back, also to make sure that the people who are coming back to Rwanda are not affected by the COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And thank you for emphasizing the need for strengthening the safety of peacekeepers to allow them to do their work and their job in the field. I think we'll turn to Deputy Minister Rudyard for additional comments on these two questions. Minister.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for having me. On the first question, I think we believe that training and capacity building are the key for preparing peacekeepers to carry out their mandated tasks, not only effectively, but also safely. And we always ensuring high peacekeeping or performance will also require educate and improve training as well as capacity building of peacekeeper, including providing peacekeepers with soft skills such as language, communication, cultural and gender awareness as well. On our part, on top of improved selection and pre-deployment training, the Indonesian Armed Forces have also established the so-called mobile training teams geared to train and build capacities of peacekeeper candidates prior to the selection processes. Indeed, conducting training during the pandemic is quite challenging, However, Indonesia remains committed to prepare our peacekeeper with the necessary skill for the deployment. Our peacekeeping training center in Bogor, the largest center in the region, has been very active, not only training in our own personnel, but also providing training and capacity building for international participants as well. Even during the pandemic, the center continues to train and prepare our personnel. For example, just early last month, we deployed 210 formed police units and engineering company to UNAMID and MINUSCA, and all of them have received the required pre-deployment training. We have been actively and consistently championing training and capacity building to improve peacekeeping performance as well as safety and security of peacekeepers. And this is in line with the shared commitment under the Action for Peacekeeping as well as Security Council Presidential Statement on Training and Capacity Building that was adopted during Indonesia presidency in the Council May last year. Lastly, Dr. Di Razza, we in Indonesia have always championing community engagement by peacekeeper. Therefore, we always include community engagement as part of training for our peacekeeper, along with training on language, human rights, as well as prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse. On the second question that you just mentioned, we see the action for peacekeeping as an important framework to guide our collective effort to reform and strengthen UN peacekeeping. And we was actively involved in the development of the A4P declaration in 2018, and among the first to endorse the declaration. For us, the 8 priorities in the A4P are equally important and mutually reinforcing. Therefore, the implementation of A4P should be comprehensive. We are pleased to note that since its launch in 2018, much has been achieved in the implementation of A4P, either through action by member state or secretariat. Obviously, COVID-19 has hindered the implementation of A4P, particularly by mission in the field. However, the pandemic should not prevent us from making progress and keep the momentum of A4P implementation. And in the upcoming peacekeeping ministerial meeting in Seoul, April 2021, I think it's an important avenue for all peacekeeping stakeholders to review the progress of A4P implementation and strengthen commitment to make peacekeeping more effective. And it's also provide opportunity as well to address not only current challenges, including COVID-19, but also discuss potential challenges that confront peacekeeping in longer term. As one of the co-chair of the ministerial meeting, Indonesia has been actively taking part in the preparation of the meeting. And then together with Ethiopia and Japan, we will co-host one of the preparatory meetings in Addis Ababa with a focus on training and capacity building. And of course, we look forward to actively participating and contributing in the peacekeeping ministerial in Seoul next year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I will now turn to Mr. Kare to offer us a perspective from the Department of Operational Support.
Thank you, Dr. Namie Di Razza. There's very little which I can add to His Excellency Minister Havisto, Professor Manasseh, and of course my dear friend Excellency Rudyard. Let me try and reflect a little bit on what we learned from Ebola. And I will give you some concrete examples. In the Ebola crisis, you know, the first medical evacuation of a UN staff member took place nearly 11 months after the Ebola epidemic was declared. But this time, as I just now told you, that we started very early in the process. We have a system-wide mechanism for medical evacuation, and so far we have received 99 requests, which we have fulfilled. So I think this was a good example. Second, the international community had to establish a special organization called UNMIR to deal with the Ebola crisis, but this time we have dealt with everything in a very smooth, integrated manner. In fact, I want to inform you and the participants that actually my own department, Operational Support, is now the corporate risk holder for response to all pandemics, the current pandemic and the future pandemics. I don't know whether that is an honor or whether that is a death sentence, but somebody has to do it, so we are doing it. So I think we have learned good lessons from Ebola. Now coming to action for peacekeeping. I have personally participated in every ministerial, at least one preparatory conference of before the ministerial, and of course in the ministerial meeting since 2015. And I have seen personally how the pledges made during these meetings, particularly for enablers, have actually been satisfied in the near term. So I think I have great hopes for the forthcoming peacekeeping ministerial meeting, as also the preparatory meetings which will precede it. On action for peacekeeping, I think since we are all agreed that we have to look at the new way of peacekeeping in the current environment, I think we need to look at what I would call an action for peacekeeping 2.0, not changing the basic concept, but including new elements. So of course, it has to be dealt with in a holistic manner, but let me cover a few issues which I think would be critical. One is provision of vaccines. I have had quite a bit of a debate, and finally I've been able to convince everybody that our peacekeepers are as much frontline workers as humanitarian workers or health workers, because they are basically frontline. So therefore, they will have to be prioritized for vaccine. And of course, since I was insistent upon it, I have been also given the responsibility of procuring the vaccine once we have the vaccine for all the UN personnel, including the uniformed peacekeepers, and we have started work on this. Second issue, we need to look at camp design. You know, our camps were designed to enhance, maximize the efficiency of land use and building use. This means people are close together. But now we have to look at a different camp design altogether. And this is something which we are working on with the troop and police contributing countries. Third issue, which I think is important, and I'm going from more specific to more general, we need to have greater use of technology. As Professor Manase pointed out, the use of drones, but we also have what I call remote monitoring. We are doing that particularly for our wastewater plants so that people don't have to go, or for energy generation, and we have to keep on looking at all things which we can do with greater use of technology so that human intervention can be specifically targeted when there is a challenge which is found rather than a general patrol. And this brings me to the next point, which is on environment. I think there is paragraph 23 in Action for Peacekeeping, which says that we all commit to deploying environmentally responsible operations. And this has become a big issue. For example, how do you dispose of a mask which has been used? Or how do you dispose of a glove? So I think we are looking very concretely at biomedical waste and other issues surrounding it. And this brings me to the last point. I do believe that apart from not cutting the budget, there is a responsibility on all member states to contribute in full, on time, and without conditions, their contributions for peacekeeping operations. I was extremely dejected last trimester when I processed nearly $600 million of reimbursements to troop and police contributing countries, but could not pay anything. And that was in the beginning of this COVID-19 crisis, when all these countries were having their own financial problems. So this year I made an effort from here and there, and I'm grateful to those who have contributed in between. So we have been able to clear the backlog of last trimester and pay a little amount, that is for personnel cost, not for equipment cost, for the current trimester. But I think this is the time when international solidarity requires that peacekeeping contributing countries are reimbursed in full and on time. Thank you.
Thank you, Undersecretary General. I think it's a lot of important elements for the upcoming peacekeeping ministerial. Many things to consider, from the provision of vaccine, ideas for and new modalities for camp design, better use of technology, even environmentally friendly peacekeeping operations. So I think new thinking and capabilities will be needed for this. And this call, thank you for reminding us that peacekeeping contributions, financial contributions are also key, so that the UN can reimburse troop contributing countries and police contributing countries. And it's a real partnership. So I think all member states are actually invited to really do their part, and I think the ministerial will provide a very good forum to discuss this. So from now, I think we can move to our Q&A session. And in the time that remains, I will turn to the questions we received from our global audience. But I will first give the floor to Ambassador Carlos Amorim, the permanent representative of Uruguay to the United Nations, who would like to make a brief intervention to start off the conversation. So Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Well, just to remind that unfortunately our Minister for Internal Duties is our internal process of accountability to the Parliament. He has to be to have a presentation in this morning to our parliamentary authorities. And well, just to reaffirm our commitment with this process, and we are very happy to be one of the sponsors of these activities. And just to, I want to make some brief comments, inform you that the whole intervention of our minister has been presented to you in order to give everybody to can see that what are the complete ideas from Uruguay. Just to be quick and not to take more time, we understand the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting UN peace operation environment with extraordinary challenges. The negative effects can be observed in many fronts: health, safety, and logistical difficulties to our peacekeepers, in particular when conducting protection of civilian tasks or performing deployments and rotation. The pandemic has also further exposed challenges to UN peace operation that are more systemic and profound. At this stage, those challenges should be familiar to the vast majority of member states and the United Nations Secretariat, and they were clearly identified in the Action for Peacekeeping Declaration, A4P. Issues like politics, women, peace and security, performance and accountability, and partnership, among others, are areas that we need to continue addressing in order to improve UN peace operation. Uruguay strongly believes in the power of collective agreements in order to overcome challenges and produce meaningful and profound change and improvement to UN peace operation. That is why we actively participate in many of the platform of discussion in peacekeeping. And have a few points in this order in order to, and we'll end with that. Number one, the Action for Peacekeeping Initiative, A4P, through its declaration of shared commitments, offer a pathway for concrete action by peacekeeping stakeholders. In this sense, Uruguay co-facilitates the discussion of the initiative. It is a signatory of the declaration and continues to take action to implement our commitments. In second place, the Special Committee on Peacekeeping Operations, C34, is a key platform that is mandated to conduct a comprehensive review of all issues relating to the United Nations peacekeeping. Uruguay reaffirms its engagement with the labor of the committee and is glad to participate as a regional coordinator during the negotiation. Furthermore, the Fifth Committee plays a central role in peacekeeping when decided on its budget and resource allocation. As its chairs for the coordinating working session, Uruguay, on my person, I assure that will spare no effort to promoting meaningful negotiation to ensure that the peacekeeping operation will have the resources and budget they need. Even its national and personal engagement. Finally, the 2021 UN Peacekeeping Ministerial is an opportunity for member states to improve the performance and impact of UN peace operation. As co-host of the process of peacekeeping ministerials, Uruguay is working together with other member states to ensure that the event will be successful, and it's also to evaluate our pledge to be offered to the United Nations. Thank you very much, and thank you for the report.
Thank you, Ambassador. Let me now take a few questions from our global audience. So we see a few of them. We have Radwa, for example, from Cornell University, who has a question on the impact of COVID-19 on our approaches to security. Do the panelists believe that responses to COVID-19 are likely to contribute to the paradigm shift from issues of state and border security to issues of human security? And if so, what dangers arise from securitizing and militarizing issues of human security? We also receive a question from Phoebe, from New York about women, peace and security in the context of the 20th anniversary of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 this month. How can we ensure that new approaches and practices adopted by peacekeeping missions during the COVID-19 pandemic do not jeopardize the goals and commitments expressed in Resolution 1325? And also a question from the ICRC, in terms of the deployment training, how have troop and police contributing countries adjusted their peacekeepers pre-deployment training to face challenges posed by the pandemic? What are the good practices, if you can add to the conversation on this? And also, what additional measures are or will be in place to ensure the effective protection of conflict-affected populations, especially in the face of a heightened risk of sexual violence, sexual exploitation and abuse that is due to the social and economic consequences of COVID-19? So 4 questions. I invite our panelists to provide some elements to any of them, and I will start with Minister Haavisto, if you want to provide a few thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Namie, and first of all, thank also Uruguay ambassador in very interesting contribution, and thanking Uruguay for good cooperation on these peacekeeping issues. Maybe the first issue on how this will affect border security versus human security. Coming from the European Union, I just want to share with you the experience that the first months of the COVID-19 pandemic was very much each and every country concerned of itself and closing borders and making different regulations. And only now, actually after several months, we have come to the conclusion that maybe we should harmonize, maybe we should have a common action and so forth. And I think the issue of the multilateralism is particularly discussed, linked to the WHO and the role of the UN in fighting this pandemic and supporting the UN institution for finding the vaccine and finding the vaccine also for the poorest countries and so forth. And I think it has been very unfortunate that there has been countries who have been withdrawn from WHO or reducing their commitment or financing just at this moment when we need the multilateralism and we need this. And I think that should be our common plea, that the fight for the multilateralism at this stage is very important. Thank you also for the question of women, peace and security. Definitely the question that is there a risk that we forget the 1325 goals when some other issues are taking the space for the discussion? And I think we should, as politicians and international actors, take care that this is not the case and keep up the 20 years of good work, but still a lot of work ahead with the 1325, and that is what we are, at least here in Finland, are underlining. And then I think this is a little bit linked also the real situation on the ground, that what's happening to the girls and women in pandemic conditions, because girls maybe do not go to the schools and are more at home and more in the isolation. And of course we have seen an unfortunate increase in domestic violence in many cases, and there issues like the Istanbul Convention and others are coming very, very important, that we respect those commitments that we have, and also have an early warning on all possibilities of this kind of abuse or violation and so forth depending on the COVID-19 situation, which has been weakening the position of girls and women, and even used for weakening the position of girls and women in some countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Maybe I'll turn to Deputy Minister Rudyard to see if there are any points that you could add, Minister, on this.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Chair. I try my best to answer all 4 of your questions. First, on the issue of border security to issue of human security. I think the global disruption of COVID-19 pandemic is unprecedented. and prompting the international community to direct their immediate attention and resources to address the impact of the pandemic. And countries in armed conflicts also have shifted their attention to provide safe access for their citizens to health facilities. However, we have to ensure that this will not reverse years of negotiation of peace process, for instance, and the other security issues. And this, I believe, will require integrated response from a wider range of stakeholders. This is also relevant in the context of the peace operation. While they are exercising their mandates, they are also assisting host countries and local communities in tackling COVID-19. Therefore, I think it is best to say that in the end, the focus should be given in ensuring our effective response to maintain international peace and security. And in this context, I a true believer that by promoting human security, I think it will contribute to the achievement of international peace and security as well. On the second question, with regard to the resolution 1322, I think I believe that the measure taken by peacekeeping mission during this pandemic will not jeopardize the commitment in resolution on women, peace and security. Instead, both of the agenda, PKO and WPS, is complementing one another. Last August 2020, last August this year, we has initiated resolution 2538 on women in peacekeeping that was adopted with the support from 97 countries. And this resolution is a concrete realization that the role of women in peace and security has been translated into the work of our peacekeeping mission. The resolution also proves that there is a synergy between the agenda of PKO and WPS. Our female peacekeepers are our valuable assets in this time of pandemic. They are the one in the front lines giving support to local communities in the fights against the pandemic. They also give voice of empowerment for women in this time of pandemic, and they also offer better protection for women and children. While we recognize the importance, we also striving to protect our female peacekeepers through training and capacity building, providing them a gender-sensitive equipment, and as well creating enabling environment for them to support their work in the field. Now, on the issue of risk of sexual violence and sexual exploitation, I think the UN Security Council has specifically mandated some of UN peacekeeping operations, for example, in MINUSCA, MINUSMA, and MONUSCO, to address conflict-related sexual violence. Also to link the protection of civilian and armed conflict to also include the protection of to all forms of sexual violence. And I believe that training and capacity building for our peacekeepers and the role of our female peacekeepers are very crucial to ensure that the effectiveness to protect civilian and armed conflict, including in this time of pandemic. Indonesia has integrated a module on sexual violence in the pre-deployment training curriculum for our peacekeepers. It aims for our peacekeepers, both male and female, to have a better understanding in dealing with such issues in the field. And the role of female peacekeepers is also central in this very issue. They are proven to have a better understanding and to provide comfortable protection to the victim for sexual violence in conflict, especially to women and children. And their ability to have a better situational awareness and engagement with community will be benefited to gain information that will effectively protect the civilian and armed conflict, including from sexual violence. Last but not least, on the issue of adjustment of peacekeepers at pre-deployment training. As I mentioned earlier, ensuring safety and security of peacekeepers is a prerequisite for improved performance on the ground. This starts with providing peacekeepers with a safe environment in their pre-deployment training. In our case, our Peacekeeping Training Center have implemented a strict screening and health protocol to our peacekeepers, which include mandatory rapid tests to peacekeepers prior to their selection process, before entering the training center facility, and during their pre-deployment training. And then strict observance to COVID-19 protocol during training, including separation of classroom and accommodation, as well as quarantine facility. Last but not least, peacekeepers are also required to take swab tests and quarantine before and after the deployment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I will now turn to our representative from Rwanda's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Guillaume Kavaruganda.
Yeah, I will take the question of ICRC, International Red Cross, the challenges by the troops. Is it okay now?
Yes.
So even before the COVID, I will be brief. Even before the COVID, the situation with peacekeeping people was difficult by itself. And now with the COVID, we have the situation has become even worse because wherever they have to do, it will take more time, more money, and more energy because they have to protect themselves, among themselves, and they have to protect also the people they have to serve or to save. So the COVID has aggravated the already difficult situation with the troops. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Mr. Carré, if you can offer us a few insights from the operational support side. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will only try to add to what has already been said. On the issue of women, peace and security, of course, we have the resolution 2538, which was adopted under Indonesia's leadership. And I want to say that not only we have to ensure that there is no backsliding from 1325, actually we have to ensure that we do even more. So I will not give you data on how my sister department, Department of Peace Operations, and my own department have now achieved largely gender parity within these two departments and how much progress we are making in the field. But I would rather say that we all need to commit ourselves and continuously recommit ourselves to do even more. And in this regard, because we know the differential impact of COVID-19 on women, and that is why the Secretary General, my boss, issued a special policy brief on 9th of April this year, so early in the process, which was related to COVID-19 and women. And I would recommend that everybody kindly take a look at it. I think this is much beyond peacekeeping because everywhere in the world, there is a differential impact which is differentiated according to gender. And I think we need to be conscious and we need to take all the mitigating measures to ensure that there is no negative impact and rather there are positive impacts. Second, on the issue of pre-deployment, now the pre-deployment training kit includes checklists on COVID-19. It includes training material for COVID-19. But I have challenged my colleagues to develop what I call a electronic learning exercise on how to do physical distancing, on how to take care of hygiene and so on. And I think this would be distributed even further so that everybody who deploys in the field completes an electronic training course, digital training course. On the issue of the broad issue of human security, I would not go into the concept of human security, but I would say that we are all in this together. And we can only get out of it together. So nowhere has been a greater need for a comprehensive, holistic response. This is not militarization. In fact, I want to think that some elements, for example, protection of civilians, it's not a question of military or police alone. Protection of civilian is a broader question of rule of law, of the societal makeup, and so on. So I think we need to work together to provide comprehensive, holistic solutions, the entire world working in solidarity with each other and not every nation for itself. And I think that is the appeal which I will leave with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carré. I really want to thank our panelists because we have a lot of recommendations, insights into what's happening in the field, efforts in terms of capacity building, training, new measures, and approaches to peacekeeping. And I think the ministerial will really be an opportunity to further discuss the capabilities that should be provided to peacekeeping operations. I would like to turn to Jake Sherman, IPI Senior Director of Programs, to provide closing remarks for our event today. So Jake, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Namie. It's clear we're still many months away from turning the corner on COVID-19. And this discussion has highlighted the many ways that the pandemic poses challenges for peacekeeping. More importantly, though, our distinguished guests today have highlighted how the UN and its member states are adapting in order to manage risks and effectively deliver on their mandates, including procedures for training, deployment and troop rotation, patrolling, and community engagement. They've also underscored how COVID-19 has increased the importance of medical and technological capacities, as well as human rights and the participation of women peacekeepers in order to improve access to communities and respond to heightened risks, including of gender-based violence. And finally, of a comprehensive approach that includes development and responds to humanitarian needs. Looking forward, all of our speakers today have voiced the need to strengthen the collective commitment to peacekeeping at a time of increased importance, from political attention and financial support to capacity building and equipment, and to use the current crisis to better prepare for future ones. Let me end today's discussion by sincerely thanking our co-hosts, Minister Havisto, Deputy Minister Rudyard, and Minister of State Manasseh, as well as Under Secretary General Kare for their thoughtful remarks today. Have a good rest of the day to everyone, wherever you are.